Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be talking about a huge pattern change that's coming to the United States as we head into 2024. And this is going to bring a lot of changes, including a very strong El Nino pattern that's going to lead to multiple storms across the southern tier of the United States. It'll bring heavy rainfall, potential for winter storms, and as well as large Arctic blasts in the near future. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast. And let's begin first with what's happening across the United States today. And we'll first begin with the Ohio Valley. And this is an area that's been very active over the last several days. We've had a very slow moving trough that began back over in Nebraska and Kansas about 4 to 5 days ago. And that's when we had blizzard-like conditions, and that same low pressure system has barely moved to the east. It's now located over Indiana and Kentucky. The good news about this is that we had a very strong dry slot, which basically allowed for the system to weaken out. If it didn't weaken out and was still producing heavy snowfall and rain, we'd be talking about a completely different storm right now with a lot of really bad impacts across much of the Ohio Valley and the Midwest. Luckily, a lot of the activity has been light and very isolated at this point. There's a lot of cloud cover, though, that's stretching across the entire Ohio Valley and then even back into the Northeast. And over the next 24 hours, this low pressure system will actually move to the north and east, and it's going to allow for some snow potential in parts of the Northeast, including New England. So that'll be something to watch for, and I'll talk about that later in this forecast as well, about how much snow you can expect there. We've even seen some accumulating snow over in Alabama and northern Georgia. Not really much. It's more of like a dusting to a coating, if anything, but it's been pretty minimal, but just something to point out there. Get a bit of a rare snow event there. The Great Plains are drying out for the most part. I do think that's going to change as we go into next week. And then back over on the West Coast, we also have some activity ongoing there. A little bit of rainfall, higher winds across parts of upstate California, western Oregon, and western parts of Washington. But for the remainder of the western tier of the United States, it's looking quite all right now for the end of December. All right, let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States as we go into the next couple of weeks, because I do think things are going to change a lot as we head into January, especially as this El Nino winter really begins to ramp up. And January is typically the most active month when it comes to winter, sometimes even February. So this is what we're looking at as of right now. We have a low pressure system that's centered back over in Ohio and as well as Kentucky. This is an upper level disturbance that'll be moving out to the north and east. And we also have a very strong jet streak going on in the southeast United States. And the main reason why I'm pointing this out is because if you're traveling on an airplane this weekend or anytime between now basically and Sunday, there might be a lot of turbulence in the southeast United States since we're looking at the jet stream here. And then over in the central plains, again, it's pretty dry overall. Same thing with most of the West Coast, the only exception being upstate California, Oregon, and as well as Washington. Now, as we go into next week, things are going to change a lot. So one thing to watch later this weekend, so by Sunday, will be a small disturbance in the Midwest. We'll probably see around a coating to an inch of snow in some scattered locations in the Great Lakes and as well as the Midwest going into Sunday. Nothing crazy though, and I'll talk about this later in this forecast as well, about how much snow you'll actually see. That's a small little disturbance though. Once we go into next week though, that's when things change a lot, because what we're going to be looking at next week is a much more definitive El Nino pattern for the winter. Usually when we've had La Nina the last few years, we've been watching a lot more storms come out of Canada, and that's very typical for La Nina. Now we're going to flip the script a little bit. Instead, the storms that we're going to be watching for the most part over the next few weeks will be coming out of the Pacific Ocean, specifically west and southwest of California, and we're going to see a lot of these. So look at this going through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Here's your first storm that we'll be watching down in the southern plains. This is going to bring a lot of rainfall, perhaps isolated severe weather. We might even see a little bit of snow out of this, and I'll talk about more on that here in a second. And back over in the Midwest, a much smaller disturbance up here. Might bring a little bit of snowfall, but it's not going to be much, and it's definitely not a winter storm. By the time we get closer to Thursday and to Friday, notice the European model continues to bring these strong and definitive storms to the southern plains and really across the entire southern tier of the United States. And again, all of these for the most part are coming from areas just west of California. And then even going into next weekend by the 6th and into the 7th, we'll be watching for a very similar weather pattern with multiple storms going across the southern tier of the United States. Now, by no means does this mean that it will not be active in the northern tier, like the Midwest, the northern plains, the Northeast. They will still have some activity. It just won't be nearly as much as what we've seen the last few winters. Now, on the future radar, let's go day by day here. So beginning with today, again, we have some snowfall, really minimal across areas in the Ohio Valley, even into parts of the Dixie Alley. We'll be watching for a better snow chance in parts of the Northeast as we go into tomorrow. That'll that'll lead to a couple inches of snow in most areas. By the time we go into Sunday, again, here's that small little clipper system in the Midwest that'll bring very minimal snowfall overall, but that'll move into the Northeast as we go into Monday. So maybe a little bit of snow across areas in the Northeast, primarily West Virginia and Pennsylvania, so kind of the mid-Atlantic more than anything. By the time we go closer to Tuesday, this is when we're going to be watching for a growing storm in the southern plains. This will likely bring a good amount of rain, maybe some isolated severe weather, and if it is cold enough, big if it's cold enough, we actually could see some snow in Oklahoma, North Texas, or even Arkansas. That is a big stretch, though. That might or might not happen, so stay tuned. I'll keep you posted with the latest on that. Here's areas in the Midwest as well going to Tuesday night into Wednesday. Another small disturbance might bring a couple of inches of snow at best to a few areas. By the time we get closer to Thursday into Friday, we might have a larger storm brewing across the East Coast out of that system, but again, we are still multiple days out. A lot of things can change between now and then, especially since we're still a week out. And as we go into next weekend, that is when things will still stay very active across the southern plains. Again, will we see snow in Oklahoma then? It's very uncertain. Since we're just so far out, things definitely will change with this, but stay tuned. We'll keep you posted with the latest, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Here's what we're looking at in the Midwest for this weekend. Again, a little bit of a closer view at this. So again, most of the snow is already winding down today. Once we go into tomorrow, things stay dry for most of the day. A little bit of some snow flurries across parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, maybe even back through Ohio. There might be even some flurries or light snowfall, and it'll become a little bit more prominent as we go into Sunday morning across areas in the Great Lakes, primarily near Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin. In terms of snowfall totals out of this, it will not be much. In fact, it really will not cause any travel impacts. In terms of the total snowfall after this is all done through Sunday, most areas, especially in the area that just circled, would be between a coating to an inch at best. That's, again, basically worst case scenario in this area. So that's what we're looking at. Again, not really much in the Midwest. In terms of the Northeast, a little bit of a different story. There will be a bit more snow here, but it's not going to be much more than what we're talking about in the Midwest on Sunday. We'll have some snowfall going to Saturday morning across areas like Maine. There will be some snow overnight tonight in New York, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And then once we go into Sunday, all of this is clearing out with maybe a little bit of lake effect snow, but it will not be much there in New York. In terms of snowfall totals, again, highest snowfall totals will be in Maine, where we might see upwards of 3 to 6 inches of snow. Otherwise, a coating to an inch or two would be basically about it in those areas. Again, really not much right now for this time of the year. All right, in terms of the temperatures over the next several days, things are going to change a little bit. So right now, below average temperatures in the southern plains and as well as the southeast, and then in the northern plains, we are well above average in some areas. And by the way, that's not changing anytime soon. Above average temperatures will continue for much of the northern tier of the United States all the way through next week. Below average temperatures will continue for much of the southern tier of the United States for the foreseeable future. This is going into Friday into Saturday of next week. So once we go further into the first week of January, we're really still looking at pretty much the same weather pattern over the next 7 to 10 days when it comes to the temperatures, but there might be some Arctic blasts as we get closer to mid to late January. I would say that's the better time frame at this point for any sort of big cool downs in the United States. From the Climate Prediction Center, for the first and second week of January, below average temperatures appear likely for much of the western tier and the southern tier of the United States. I would even throw in the southeast to that picture as well. And then in the northeast and the Midwest, that's where above average temperatures remain likely over the next 7 to 14 days. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.